Out there, in the quiet places between dying stars, where everything whispers about how pointless it all is, a being of pure thought set out to do the impossible, to conquer chaos itself. This is the story, the dark fable of the last thinker, and the grand, terrible thing he built, the architecture of absolute ruin.
So what makes someone want to chain down the entire universe? Well, the last thinker tells us himself. It wasn't about power, not really. His grand design wasn't born from some grand ambition. No, it came from a deep, hollow fear, a bone-deep terror of the void, of chance, of what he called the meaningless error of just existing.
I mean, can you imagine looking at everything, all of life, all the change, every possibility, and just seeing a tasteless broth? That's how it felt to the last thinker. He looked at the universe's stained blueprints and saw nothing but a chaotic, sloppy mess, a problem that needed a final solution. He was going to build a master architecture so perfect, so permanent, that all that messy motion would just stop for good.
So what was his big idea? He called it the Creed of the Cosmic Mind. And let me tell you, this was an unforgiving philosophy. This wasn't about suggestions or gentle guidance. This was about absolute static control. The whole point was to bind reality with a cold, rigid Apollonian law, a law that was never, ever supposed to bend, and it certainly was not supposed to break.
And to enforce this creed, he couldn't just use wishes. He forged tools, his instruments of order. Things he called gilded cages of logic and Apollonian gaskets of law. You see, he wasn't building a home for the cosmos, he was building a prison. A perfect prison designed to lock away every secret, every wild idea, to make absolutely sure that nothing could ever escape his control again.
In his mind, his creation was a fortress, like one of those magnificent sandcastles you build to hold back the ocean. Except he was convinced his could actually win. It was designed to be perfect, immutable, the final say in how the universe worked. A structure so absolute that the very idea of change would become impossible.
And right there, that's the fatal flaw. That's the one thing the architect and all his genius missed. He had a defense for everything, for force, for competing logic, for cosmic war. But he never ever considered the one thing his perfect system had no answer for, the absurd. He never prepared for someone to just laugh at it.
So his undoing didn't thunder in on some great cosmic wave. It wasn't an army. It was a sound that just completely shattered the perfect, frozen silence he had worked so hard to create. Laughter, you see, became a weapon, a jagged blade. It was the ultimate proof that even the strongest, most rigid logic is brittle, and it can be broken by something as simple and as silly as a joke.
And that's when they showed up, spilling out from the very void he was trying to cage. They weren't what you'd call gods or monsters. They were just three siblings, three primal forces. There was the wit, the power of absurdity itself, the hunger, this bottomless desire for what's next, and the small, the endless creeping power of tiny, insignificant flaws. Each one was a living, breathing truth his system just couldn't handle. So, in a moment of cold, chilling clarity, what does the last thinker do? He does what he does best. He catalogs his own failure. He realized the wit proved that logic is completely helpless against the absurd. The hunger showed him that no amount of order can ever cage the spirit of becoming, that constant drive for change. And the small taught him the most humbling lesson of all, that grand, perfect creations are always, always undone by the little things, by trifles.
And the strangest part? The siblings didn't want his fortress. They had no interest in his throne. Their goal was something else entirely, something way more subversive. All they wanted was to hear the sound of shattering expectations. They were there to prove, once and for all, that his system could be broken, that no law, no matter how absolute, could ever truly hold.
And they didn't just knock down his monument to perfect static order. Oh no, that would have been too simple. They warped it. They twisted it. His grand fortress became a surreal playhouse, a stage, a theater for his own humiliation, where his own perfect logic was put on display as it died a slow, colorful death.
My grand mission collapsed into a humiliating spectacle of rhythmic stumbles. With those words, the last thinker just admits how pathetic it all became. His rigid laws didn't just crack, they fermented, they rotted,
They turned back into the very same tasteless broth he had tried so hard to give form to.
And in that moment, it all became clear. The crushing realization that his entire life's work was pointless. Trying to write an eternal, unchanging law onto the pages of the cosmos, it was an illusion. It was like signing a contract written in disappearing ink. The universe, he finally understood, is always subverting itself, always ensuring that even the most rigid plan has a spark of chaos in it.
So let's go back to that sandcastle, because that really tells the whole story, doesn't it? Step 1, the foundation, his creed of static control, which seemed so strong. Step 2, the first crack, just the sound of laughter. Step 3, the high tide, chaos rushing in, turning his perfect logic back into that tasteless broth. And finally, step 4, the ruins, where all he could do was dance on the blank page where his masterpiece used to be.
And so, that's where we leave him, performing a perpetual grave dance on the rubble of everything he built. In the final, most terrible irony, the architect who wanted to end all motion is now trapped in an endless dance. He's become a part of the very chaos he dedicated his entire existence to destroying.
So, what's the takeaway from this tragedy? His story leaves us with a pretty grim, paradoxical truth. That the honest currency of the soul, the thing that's real, isn't found in perfect plans or absolute control. It's found in the dark, fertile ground of the void, when all our expectations are finally shattered. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the chase for perfection always just a blueprint for our own ruin?